Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It is a Tuesday. It's the Tuesday tune-up. You've got lots of stuff with Thomas Tuchel expected to be brought into Chelsea here at any point. We'll talk about what the Blues could look like on the field under Thomas Tuchel, because there's some open questions about that. We'll talk about the MLS 2021 calendar that is out. There is still a giant asterisk by it because the league and the Players Association are still chatting, and they're letting us know they're still chatting. That part's good. Hopefully they keep chatting quietly behind the scenes and come back with an announcement, and everything starts on time, which the timing is honestly about what we thought it would be when it sounded like the season was going to get delayed. Wait until after that March international break. You're going to miss about 3-4 games you can squeeze in later. You've already pushed the MLS Cup back into December, according to this calendar, so you really haven't lost anything. It kind of is what it would be in a 34-game season. It all makes sense. We'll get into that. I also want to get into the New York Red Bulls and the Caden Clark situation, what this could mean for the Red Bulls' long-term strategy, because we've kind of wondered what that would be and what it has been, because the Red Bull organization has said they're not happy with the youth development in New York. Well, Caden Clark could show you another way that they might be successful in the Red Bull organization. But we are going to start everything off with a question. First off, we have Jarrett Smith lurking for a little while this morning. What's up, Jarrett?
Yeah, not a lot. Every time I hear the intro now and it coincides with, like, earlier seeing someone mention Bubba Sparks on Twitter, I do get a little bit of nostalgia.
You want the Peachtree Post opening is what you want.
Some days.
And you know, like that one, I don't want to run foul of Bubba. You know, we were kind of
want to run foul of Bubba.
No. I've known Bubba back in the day, and I don't want Bubba coming after me. We were flying under the radar back in those days. Now
it just always makes me think, like, oh yeah, I remember those.
Yeah.
Days we just used Bubba Sparks.
Nobody was really listening much anyway, so it was okay.
Licensing,
Yeah, I mean, news manager, so
he was an outlaw.
He was an outlaw. We were outlaws. It all worked. The theme we are using now is actually gifted to me from DJ Jelly here in the Atlanta area with Big Oomp Records. If you know Jelly, you know Big Oomp. He's done a lot of mixed stuff with V103 as well. Jelly is really good people. He's a legend in the DJ game in Atlanta, and he had some tracks they ended up never using, and told him what we were doing, and he said, "Here, pick what you want, do what you want with it." So we did, and it stuck, and it's become kind of our signature. Okay, but Jarrett, John, here's where we're going to start. You guys don't know this, but we have a virtual production intern here at Soccer Down Here. It's not Mateo. It's a real virtual production intern named Niall. And Niall was given a task today, and he's going to be given a few tasks in the show to help out this week. The question that Niall came up with to pose to the floor.
Okay.
And this is going to be an ongoing question throughout the show. So if you guys out there listening on the app, if you're listening on the website at soccerdownhere.net, if you're listening on Twitch or watching on Twitch, twitch.tv/soccerdownhere, we want your opinions. We'll talk about them here in just a bit. The question is, can Leicester City win the league in 2021? Niall thinks that they are in the mix. And here is the reasoning. You've got a goal scorer in Jamie Vardy. You've got to have goals to win at this level. You can't just be defense. They've got a guy in Vardy. They've got some contributing pieces, and that's been John's question. Do they have the other pieces around to be a secondary scorer? Harvey Barnes, Madison. You've got some players who are picking up the slack a little bit. Niall likes the midfield with Madison, with Ndidi. Niall is a big fan, and Jarrett, you might want to argue this one, of the experience of Brendan Rodgers. He's been here. He's done that. Maybe he's learned from the Liverpool run. Maybe he learned from his time at Celtic.
I just didn't like the way it ended.
Okay, so you're still salty about that.
I just didn't care for the way it ended last time.
Fair enough.
But the experience itself is great. Yeah, no, anyone who gets to experience modern-day Brendan Rodgers should enjoy it. It's fun.
Fair enough. Niall likes the squad depth at Leicester. He's a big fan of the players who have been brought in, some of the surprises like James Justin. Lots of options. So if you have any dips in form, you've got other players to turn to. He also, and I thought this was a really important point. We talk about tactics and philosophies, and if you see a team play, you know who they are straight away. You don't, like, if they're in their alternate kit, if they're in a crazy third kit, you see them play, you're like, oh yeah, that's Brendan Rodgers, that's Leicester. He likes the tactical flexibility that Leicester has. They've played some 4-2-3-1, they've played some 3-4-3. It's made it difficult for the opponents to prepare and to know what's coming from Leicester. That's something that a team, I think, in Leicester's spot really needs, because you can't just out-talent people. He's also a fan of, Leicester's a unique team in this, because you see these underdog teams pop up, and you typically in those situations, you have guys who haven't been in this spot before. It can be overwhelming. Not Leicester. Jamie Vardy, Kasper Schmeichel. Been there, done that. They've got a medal. They've got a league title under their belts. So this isn't too big for them. They're going to be a big help. Niall's swinging me. I've thought Leicester was in the mix. I haven't been 100% convinced. I think I've been a little more on the yay side than John. John's been worried about the goal scoring. I think they are in that 4. I don't know if they are higher than 4.
Yeah.
I still think it's City and United's to lose. I think those are the two it's going to come down to. Liverpool, with their quality, I can't rule them out yet. And I think Leicester is right behind them. But they are in the race. It is a 4-horse race right now, in my opinion.
One of the things for me in looking at the run-in, and I think that, and I agree with you, I think that Leicester is one of the 4. I have them 4th. The run-in for Leicester, Manchester United, Chelsea, Tottenham. That's their last 3 matches of the year. So if there's any room that needs to be made up one way or the other, those last 3 matches can help out, and they can get some help from other places. So in addition to that, I was looking at the schedule as you were talking about. There's another stretch that concerns me. It is February 10th, and it's about a 2.5-week stretch. FA Cup, Liverpool, Europa League, then you've got Villa a couple days later. Then you come back for the second leg of Europa League in the round of 32. Then you've got Arsenal. That's February 10th through February 27th. So I have 2 stretches in the schedule that I think could get them one way or the other, that could really reinforce that 4th and go higher, or things could completely and totally reinforce 4th or lower for me.
So, Jarrett, you've had more experience watching a Brendan Rodgers team on a regular than I have. Is he ready for a title race? It's going to see him, button heads with Ole, with Klopp, with Pep.
I mean, it's one of those things. I don't know if you're ready until we see it.
Right.
It's like, are you ready? I don't know. We're going to find out in the moment, though. He's done everything else I think you can ask of him at this point. This doesn't feel to me like the Cinderella run that Leicester went on a couple of years ago. I say a couple of years ago. It's been longer than that now. Time is a scam.
Time's a guess these days.
Yeah,
time is a scam. This doesn't feel like that kind of run where it's like, well, man, this is their shot to do it. If they don't do it this year, then it might take them another 10 years to get there. No, it kind of feels like they can be in that Champions League chase consistently if he stays there and gets the pieces he needs. There was a report that one of the reasons he left Celtic was, I haven't seen if it's verified or not, so salt in hand, keep it with the grains, that he didn't get the budget he wanted to chase some of the guys he wanted in Glasgow. And he's going to probably get that at Leicester. If he can get those guys and if he can make it work, then, I mean, why not be there year after year? So I guess I don't know if he is ready or not. We'll find out. But if he's not, it's a good way to sharpen up the tools here for what I think, if he stays, can be a consistent run year after year, where he might not be challenging like first, second, third place year after year, but I think he can be in that top 5 year after year. And, you say now, well, is he a guy who has the experience to be in that race? I don't know. But I feel like in 2 years' time, we'll be having this conversation of, oh, they're in the top 3, and Brendan Rodgers has been here before. So at the very least, it's good experience for what should be consistency.
So here's the question that John, I want you to put on the Twitter so we can get responses and we'll talk about it. I'm going to make it 2 parts. Is Leicester a title contender today in the Premier League? Flip side, if they don't qualify for the Champions League next year, is that a disappointment? That's my question today as we framed. And thanks to intern Niall for getting us started with that today. Wowchara is demanding we jump into MLS right now, and we will do what the people want. I got your back, Wowchara. So let's get into the MLS side of things. We'll talk about more on the European side later. It looks like Thomas Tuchel might have a press conference later today if he arrives. There's people standing outside of the Chelsea headquarters. Like, I don't know, we might have a press conference, we might not, who knows. So we'll get into that later. Let's talk about MLS. We have an update on what the calendar looks like. It's not a dramatic departure, to be perfectly honest. The preseason is pushed a month back. The start of the season is pushed a month back. So your dates to understand. And there's Niall in the Twitch pitch jumping in. February 22nd is when preseason opens. 6 weeks. And there's a quarantine period when players report. Now, I'm assuming that is prior to the start of training on the 22nd. MLS is back opening weekend, April 3rd, April 4th, Saturday, Sunday. That's the first weekend after the international break. You have CONCACAF Champions League starting in the midweek right after that. Heineken Rivalry Week, late in August. You're going to have an All-Star game. You're going to have Leagues Cup. You're going to have a Campeones Cup. All right. Decision Day, November 2nd, the last day of the regular season. Then you have the November international break. Playoffs start on November 19th. MLS Cup December 11th. It's basically, Jarrett, taken what the league used to do with a early March start and a early December final, shaving a month off, so compressing a little bit, and getting it done. Good? Bad? You upset about it?
I think I'm upset mostly in the sense of, and it's just selfishness, that I wanted to start sooner than April. That's where I'm at with it. Not bad necessarily. It's going to be tight if you do have the Olympics. I'm still not convinced you're going to have the Olympics right now. Although I do like the fact that somebody in Florida said, well, they should put the games in Florida if Japan doesn't want them.
Sure, why not?
Why not?
Hey, shoot your shot, Florida. Aside from that, you've got other tournaments, so I think it's going to be tight. There's going to be squad rotation like nobody's business, but I'm not upset at it. You've got to start prepping for 2022 anyway, so you might as well start kind of inching this thing, out on a branch away from the trunk of the tree. So you got to start getting there anyway. So
you wanted to. You can't though.
You got to.
Yeah. Well, you can't do it the way you want though, and that's the frustrating part.
You got to do something.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the idea, we talked about this when MLS shifted to the November MLS Cup final as opposed to December. It's like, well, why are they doing that? Why are they compressing the schedule even more than what they were doing before? Oh, yeah, 2022 World Cup, because you've got to have an early November MLS Cup. So, they had a lot of different explanations for it. That was the main reason. Well, then, last year, you had COVID, and you had to push the Cup final back. This year, you've still got COVID, and you've got a CBA discussion, and you've got players wanting to push games back later. They wanted a longer off season because of everything with COVID. You've got owners who probably want more games in front of full stadiums. You want to make that money back, so you push it back. Now, to Jarrett's point, you end December 11th. That's MLS Cup. You're going to have to start 2022, and we really hope we're not still dealing with COVID in the same way at that point. But you're going to have to start the 2022 season no later than the first weekend in March, because you have to have MLS Cup as early in November as possible, because the World Cup starts in late November, and guys are going to be gone. And you don't want to have a situation where your MLS Cup final, somebody's reporting to national team camp, and they miss the Cup final. You can't do that. So it's going to be very compressed from opening day this year to MLS Cup 2022 because of that World Cup being at the end of the year.
Yeah, you're looking at, making up 4 games in a 7-month calendar?
But that's doable. It's the same format that you had set last year.
Right.
It's the exact same format except shifted back a month.
Yeah.
Because remember, last year you started the first weekend in March, February 29th for some. You were supposed to have the final in early November. So what are you doing this year? You're starting a month later, and you're having the Cup final a month later. So it's the same compression that you would have had last year. So that's no different. Like, yeah, it's different in that in a year where you would have MLS Cup in December and you'd start in early March, you'd be able to spread it out a little bit more. You can't do that. But they had already decided to have this kind of compression. They just shifted it back a month. So it's no different.
No. And so, to Jared's point, with schedule compression, yes, things are going to have to be managed. But the schedule, you're having to basically think about 2 schedules and how many months from April until November. So 4, 7, so 19 months. You're having to figure out 2 schedules in basically a year and a half so you can get out the door and be ready for the World Cup in 2022. And this is the first step in that.
Yeah, a couple of things so there's no confusion here. It's a normal schedule. It is a normal season. Now, the balance of the schedule with games against different conferences, all that kind of stuff is different. There's no midseason tournament. That was just because of COVID. Like, look, last year happened because nobody had ever dealt with a pandemic in midseason. Like, you had to figure things out on the fly. This is a normal season. Now, one question that's come up, AA 5 Stripes in the Twitch pitch asks about, do you have room to reschedule games? Not a lot. You don't. And that's going to be a bit of a challenge. But you don't have a lot of options. And that's the reality here. You want to play 34 games. Why do you want to play 34? You've sold 34 games to your sponsors. You've sold a 34-game season to your TV partners. You don't want to have to give them money back. You probably did last year. Don't know for sure. You don't want to do that again. You want to live up to those deals. So you want to play a full season. If that means you might have a couple more midweek games because an early season game gets postponed because of COVID, and I think the hope is by April, maybe we won't have as many issues with that. Don't know. Ragamuffin says you've also sold 17 home games to your fans, and yeah, you have. And again, what can you do? Do you not play? I mean, this is the thing that I don't understand from some of the pushback on some of these different things when leagues are trying to figure it out. Do you want the games to not be played at all because fans can't be there? This came up in the Bundesliga. You had German supporters groups very early in this say it's not real if the fans aren't there. Don't do it. Don't do it. Then clubs are going to go out of business.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the reality. Do you want to be the reason that clubs go out of business because you say they can't play without fans there? There's nothing you can do. And the clubs have to make it up to the fans. And we've seen it different in every league in the world. Jarrett, in Scotland, you've had fans buy season tickets knowing that they're not going to be able to attend, but doing it to help the club, and the club has tried to make it good. That's going to be a huge challenge for everybody, but I would hope that people realize the club's hands are tied in this. You can't have fans in the building if the local government doesn't allow you to, and you got to play because of all those other financial reasons, or you go out of business.
And it's a weird needle to thread.
Yeah, it's tough.
Because you also want to maintain, any sense of, not being a PR nightmare, which is totally possible. That can happen in these situations. You're out there, selling tickets, hoping that you're able to host games if you can. I mean, you want to be able to do something for people, but you also kind of have to keep it in the realm of, how much can you do? How much can you get away with the idea of, we have games when we not? Is that going to impact what we do as a make good? Then you have the whole TV issue, which is an entirely another kettle of fish. And a lot of that has to do with the Sinclair broadcasting thing because, as we've gone over, it's not as simple as just like setting up a live stream like a preseason game where you don't have contract commitments, where you can stream it on the website. It's just not that simple. I mean, you got to get around contracts, and it involves discussions and it involves negotiations, and it gets really dumb really quickly. And it's tough. It's tough for everybody because ideally, like, you'd love to be able to say, hey, guys, we won't be able to come to games, but hey, season ticket holders, here is our app. You can stream games on the app. Here is your free access. Non-season ticket holders will have to pay a certain amount, but you won't have to pay, that sort of thing. Like that, I think, would be a great situation, but it is not that easy.
And you can't contractually do it.
Don't ever think it is.
Yeah, you can't contractually do that. Scottish teams did that. And I know that was one of the big selling points.
They've already all got their own. They've got a weird setup where every team has like their own personalized, you can stream from around the world website. Most Atlanta United season ticket holders probably have at least, I would hope, have at least signed up for the Aberdeen one that you basically got a chance to watch free soccer. So I mean, you might as well.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, and nobody could have planned for what you do to run a professional sports league in a pandemic. It's just there's no way to know how to handle it. Nobody knows even what time it's going to be when fans are going to be allowed back in the buildings and in full capacity. There's just no way to know these things, so everybody's flying a little blind. I think most people have been understanding of that. I think teams are doing the best they can to navigate it, but you've got to get the games off one way or another. I'm okay with the calendar. I think it makes sense. I think it's the best that they could do. Now, of course, they still have to get everything done with the players, and they have to get all of that sorted out. They gave an update in the announcement about the calendar. They said, basically reiterating, they gave the proposal about 100% of salary, 2-year extension of the CBA. There was a response to the proposal from the players on January 23rd. They talked yesterday again. There's not been an agreement reached yet, and they've talked about a January 29th deadline for that. I don't know contractually if that's a hard deadline, if that's a soft deadline, if that can be a flexible deadline. The league has indicated that it is a hard deadline. The MLSPA has said they didn't know anything about a deadline. We haven't seen the contract, so there's no way to know. I don't know who's right, who's wrong in that. But now that you have dates and you've got to work through it, I don't know. I'm assuming that MLS puts dates out because they feel like things are in a good place and they're going to get this done. We haven't heard a pushback from the players about the dates coming out. I take that as a positive sign. Maybe I'm just looking really hard for a positive sign.
No, I think you're right. I think that it's a positive when you have, frankly, when you have discussions that aren't public, and then you have a Twitter account pop up, and you're wondering, okay, is this information legit because it looks like it's a full screen that's put on letterhead that we're used to seeing, and then we have to do some digging, and you realize, okay, this is a legit statement being put out. Things have been fairly quiet up to this point, other than when they announced a couple of things, but the negotiations themselves have been fairly quiet. Then you have this statement pop up yesterday, so I'm taking it with optimism and seeing where it goes. And to Jarrett's point about the Fox RSNs, our footprint is only one of 5, I think. So you basically are talking about 1/5 of your entire league that is attached to regional sports networks. Minnesota, Atlanta, I think NYC through the Yes Network is part of that in some way, Columbus and Sporting Kansas City. So you're talking about a lot of key markets for successful MLS teams that are having to deal with the same TV issue that Jarrett brought up just a little bit ago.
Yeah, and that's another element to this that makes everything complicated. It's, when you sign a contract with an entity and then they're sold twice, and the current owners have a different approach than the original owners you signed a deal with, you're kind of in a bad spot. And there's not a lot you can do with that. And it's frustrating. It's very, very frustrating, and you're trying to solve it. I feel better about where things are. I know there's been some questions about CONCACAF and how that fits in. The first game of CONCACAF will be a couple days after the MLS opener. It's actually better than it's been in the past, where the first game of CONCACAF was about 10 days before the opener. I would expect that most teams will train in their markets at their training facilities for preseason. I would expect preseason games as well behind closed doors with nearby teams. So, for Atlanta United, for example, does that mean Chattanooga Red Wolves? Does that mean Chattanooga FC? Does that mean Greenville Triumph? Does that mean South Georgia Tormenta?
Come on down, Tri-City Otters. Let's be honest.
That's USL League 2, Jarrett, and they won't be functioning at that time because it's the college players coming in. Sorry to burst your bubble. Not going to happen.
I'm sorry, and Fear the Foot as well. I think that the Appalachian FC is using Fear the Foot. So I
like that. NPSL, Appalachian FC, and they're in with the Atlanta-based teams and the Georgia-based teams. They'll be traveling down.
The entire Appalachian area is just Fear the Insert.
It's Appalachia. I mean, it's pretty accurate, I think.
It's good.
Fear everything.
There's a lot.
Fear Appalachia.
Yeah,
there's a lot to fear in Appalachia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beautiful things in Appalachia, and a lot of them are my family members, but yeah.
Scary. Lots of scariness. Birmingham, obviously, would be another one that could be involved in this. There's a lot of different, the Charlotte Independents. There's a lot of different teams that could factor into this that are nearby. Atlanta's in a good spot for that. I would expect stuff like that to happen because you're going to need some games to get ready. And it's going to be probably a very different preseason than Gabriel Heinze would have ever envisioned for his first time in Atlanta. But in some ways, I think it could be exciting for him because he's going to get a lot of time behind closed doors to drill with this team. And a lot of what he wants to do is it's repetition. It's intensity, but it's repetition in certain movements, in certain actions, in certain rotations. And that's going to be really important for him to decide what he has and decide what the group looks like and decide how it fits together the best. But you need some games to test it too. Like that's the balancing act. And I think we saw it in the 2 years of Frank de Boer in preseason. Year one, you saw a lot of training. You didn't see a lot of game action. Year two, you saw a lot of game action. You didn't see as many just training camps. You saw the game with Leones Negros. You saw the game in Birmingham. You saw a lot of games. I wonder what Heinze will prefer. I don't know. That's kind of up for grabs. But to have a good 6 weeks to prepare, that's good for a new coach. That's a good situation for a new coach that is not starting from scratch because a lot of the principles of the way Heinze wants to play have similarity to what Frank was doing and what Tata was doing here. But things have changed a bit. He's going to be able to drill those changes in. Go ahead, Jarrett.
Oh. No, I got nothing.
Okay. I thought you were chiming in. Are you about to leave us? No. You'd said 30 minutes.
We can go into a little bit of stoppage time.
There we go. Well, then I'll ask you this. Then what player are you looking at going into preseason that you think has the most to prove for Atlanta United?
I think for me it's Emerson Hyndman.
Okay.
His last showing, and you can call it fair or otherwise, that your last showing was a CONCACAF Champions League game. But it's a snapshot that was the send-off for Stephen Glass before he goes back to the twos, and it was your first chance to really put something on paper for your new manager. And I just thought he was kind of there. Also, this midfield is reportedly going to get even more crowded. And I like Hyndman, but when he's just there, he's just there. And when it's not clicking, it's just there. And that's not necessarily going to be good enough game to game. I think he has a lot to prove, especially that he is, on a more expensive TAM deal. I think he has a lot to prove to get a lot of time on this team. Otherwise, you get into like late summer and Emerson Hyndman's not getting time on the field and taking up a big chunk of TAM. I think you're looking around on that one. So I think he does have a lot to prove to be a part of what should be a very competitive midfield.
What about you, John?
I was thinking Mateus Hossetu. because, would he be drifting back? Would he be a part of the discussion at the 6? Would he be, playing more forward in his role? So what version are we getting? Are we going to see somebody who could be in both places at some points during the year? Is he going to be in one position over another? So I was thinking of Hosetsu because of where he would be fitting in this season.
See, it's funny both of you guys mentioned central midfielders because that's the area of the team that I think will have the biggest change. And some of it is down to a full year of Marcelino Moreno. Some of it is down to potentially Franco Ibarra coming into this team from Argentinos Juniors, and we'll keep you posted on any new updates out of Argentina on that one. But you're also going to be asking the players to kind of align a little bit differently. Gabriel Heinze generally wants one holding midfielder behind two. And it's not really 2 10s, it's more of 2 8s, but with attacking license. Again, back to the whole 6, 8, 10 discussion and all of that. He's not going to have a central midfielder who is completely free as a 10 would be, just to attack and not defend. He will have at least one, and almost always one, but there's times where things will change around. He will have one who is dedicated to defending and dropping between the center backs and helping in the build-up from time to time, but also being that pivot that everything kind of revolves around. And is that going to be Ibarra? Is that going to be Mo Adams? Is that going to be Eric Remedi? Is that going to be Mateus Hosetsu? Emerson Hyndman played in a holding role, but generally as part of a duo like Ibarra has. Is he going to drop deeper? Don't know. Does Fernando Meza step into a role like that? We don't know. That's an important puzzle to solve, the central midfield. Hyndman has to be in more dangerous places like he was early in the season. The 3-4-3 that Atlanta was playing early on really suited him because he had some license to fill the gaps in the half space in the attack. And I thought he was dangerous in that. Later on, it was up and down, and I don't know how much of an effect COVID was for him. He said he tested positive. He was very inconsistent after that. He'd have really good performances, and he'd have some where he was just there, and he didn't give you enough. He didn't seem to have it on a regular basis. He's going to have competition now. I thought Mo Adams came on really strong late in the season before he was injured at the very end. Mo is a player with the characteristics that should excite Gabriel Heinze. The question is going to be the on-the-ball side. But the amount of ground he covers, the intensity, how fast he closes things down, how fast he can flip the field, those are all exciting things for a manager who wants to play in the way that Gabriel Heinze wants to play. Can Mo do that consistently? Because he could be a big surprise in this system. Hosetsu, Hyndman, two players who are a little more technical. They're going to have to show the intensity on a regular basis. They're going to have to show the ability and the reading to close things down quickly. But then they're also going to have to show the quick transition. Moreno has it. We know he does. That's his game. Perfectly suited to what we're going to see this year. Mo Adams has a lot of it. Quality on the ball is going to be the question. I think he's better on the ball than he gets credit for. Hyndman and Hosetsu, it's a lot of the intensity. Remedi, it's consistency. Because he's got the ability to play in this. We've seen him close people down quickly. We've seen him transition quickly. Good passer when he gets forward. We've also seen him give the ball away a lot in bad situations. At times you just can't. And that inconsistency has been a problem for him. What's the midfield trio going to be if Ibarra comes in, if Meza slots into that spot, if Anton Walks, who grew up playing in the holding midfield, if he slots into that spot? You've got so many different questions. The midfield trio is the biggest question mark for me coming into the year.
Yeah, running through all of those names. There's a lot of folks that I'm looking forward to seeing with the new coach and the new approach and how things work out stylistically. And there were points, obviously, with Eric Remedi last year where you were driven crazy, and then there were points where you saw who the individual was brought in the first place. Mo Adams seemed to grow into his role as the season went along last year. So that was the reason that, as Jarrett brought up Hyndman, that was why I was thinking Hosetsu with all of this activity that could be going on in the midfield. That's where, obviously, Jarrett, my focus is going to be coming up.
Jarrett, what teams around MLS are you putting your eye on going into preseason? Is there anybody who's made some moves that has impressed you? Anybody you're worried about in the league that's going to be, either, having a big dip in form? What has jumped out to you in the MLS offseason preparing for 21?
I still want to see if LAFC actually fixes their defense, like legitimately fixes their defense, because they're still probably not going to win a cup, like MLS Cup, with the defense they've got when it comes down to playoff time. I'm very excited to see what is Philadelphia's follow-up to last year. You are losing guys. You are going to have to replace them coming out of that academy, which seems to be, putting out a good bit of smoke right now. How do you follow up last year? I really want to see what Chris Armas does because, it's Chris Armas in an environment in a Toronto team that is getting a bit long in the tooth, and I don't know how they plan to how long they plan to go with this, and at what point do you pull the ripcord on an older team? Another one I'm looking at right now is Austin. Because I don't know if I'm jumping because I won't be here much longer, but I'm gonna go ahead and jump the gun on a possible topic you had of the Galazo Argentino about Tomas Pochettino being linked to Austin.
Yep.
And buddy, that's some heavy lifting Austin's doing. Austin's not playing games.
No, that's a big one. Tomas Pochettino, no relation to Mauricio. Plays for Talleres in Argentina. Talleres was a really fun team to watch. They're not one of the big teams by any stretch. A lot of young players coming through. He always grabbed my attention when Talleres was on in the Copa Diego Maradona. He always, it was all facets of the central midfield. I mean, I think he's an attacking central midfielder, but he can transition and he can defend. He just... You see players who pop up in the right spots on a regular basis. It's not an accident. It's not luck. He seemed to be that guy to the point that a lot of people saying, well, Boca needs to upgrade these positions. River needs to upgrade these positions. He's the guy they need to go get. He should be on the list for both. Tomas Pochettino coming to Austin is a really big get if they can pull this off. Cesar Luis Merlo had it as well. Golazo Argentino had it as well. It sounds like it's going to happen. Massive get. I really like that signing, and he's not coming from a big club, so people are probably like, well, whatever. Yeah. He could be the newcomer of the year in MLS this year.
So I'm very excited about him. I'm very excited about what Austin's doing in general. I'm going to always have my eye on teams like a Toronto, like Columbus, like Seattle that are getting a little bit long in the tooth, especially now Seattle. I'm real curious about how successful are you replacing Jordan Morris. I don't hate the move because I think it can bring some money to Seattle, and everybody needs money right now. Good on you for doing it. How do you replace Jordan Morris out there? As always, because I have signed a deal with Mephistopheles himself, I will forever be wondering, what does Matias Almeida do with the San Jose Earthquakes in 2021 to follow up? So the more stuff will develop as preseason goes on and, get an idea of who to look at. Also, Minnesota needs a striker, like a real striker.
Yes.
So there's that too. There's a lot of storylines around. And not to just anyone in general, but like, hey man, if y'all are like looking around for something to dig around on, anyone, like a lot of stories around MLS you can dig up on, but everybody needs something.
Yeah, Austin's a fun one. Wildchara, man, you cracked me up, my friend. Austin made a signing that Atlanta used to make. Do you remember the 19-year-old from Argentinos Juniors that we were talking about earlier and yesterday? That's kind of the same sort of thing.
I remind you all that most people didn't know who Miguel Almiron was before Miguel Almiron came.
Exactly, and that was Byrne brought that up in the Twitch pitch. Is he Austin's Miguel Almiron? He's a different player. I don't want you to compare him in terms of the way he plays.
I don't know if you can compare anyone to Miguel Almiron. He's kind of a unicorn.
He's pretty unique, but trajectory, coming here for a couple of years and then going for a nice move to Europe, absolutely. I think Tomas Pochettino could be that kind of player. But, Atlanta's still making those kinds of moves. I don't know why there's this criticism and stuff going on, but have fun with your narratives, guys, if that's the way you want to go. If everything's negative, I know it's easy to be negative. That's what sells. Negativity and cynicism. Yay! It's fun! It's a fun place to be! Yippee! Whatever works for you. Atlanta doesn't need to make a signing like that at the moment because you're getting Joseph Martinez back. You've added Jurgen Damm. You still have Ezequiel Barco. You've got Marcelino Moreno for a full season. If you add Franco Ibarra, he's a player who could be a big surprise and a big addition. You're in a good spot. You know, you've got a good roster. I think you have as good of a roster as anybody in the Eastern Conference with Joseph back. His impact coming back will be huge. You add Alessandro Lopez, so you have a veteran player coming off the bench. You know, it's big. There was a question, and I want to get y'all's take on it real quick from Katie earlier. Does the extended offseason, does it help Joseph, or does it hurt Joseph because it's been so long since he played? Is it a good thing or a bad thing, John?
I know that from Joseph's perspective, he wants to get back to work, but I'll take him at 100% of Joseph. And if this is the timetable to get acquainted with everybody for Joseph to get to 100%, I'm all for a little bit more of a gap.
Yeah, I think it helps him physically recover. I think it's hurting him in the sense that he's probably crawling up the walls.
Yeah.
Trying to actually get back into a competition. As much as we talk about injuries being mental, especially knee injuries, being a mental thing where it's not just a matter of recovery, it's a matter of you trusting your body to be able to do the things you used to do. I don't want to put too much pressure on Joseph, but he does seem like the kind of cat that isn't going to be limited by his brain as much as some people are in terms of what he can and can't do. And it might be to his detriment, and thus it might be better to have an extra little bit of time off because he might want to just hit the ground and I'm going to do all the things I used to do. The end.
Yeah.
I think it ends up helping because you're, 51 weeks when training camp opens from when the injury was?
Yeah.
A lot of people say it's a full year. I mean, you might be back before that year is up, but it's a full year of recovery. So you're going to be, a full year since the injury, second week of training. Now, I know the surgery was a little bit later, but it'll be a full year since the surgery, I think before you start. So I think the surgery was in late March, if I remember right.
Also, it's still terrifying that he's still only 27 years old.
Yeah.
Joseph feels like he should be 29. Nah, that's terrifying.
No, I don't think of him older like that at all. I was actually thinking for some reason a little bit younger than 27. He's got plenty of tread left on those tires. And yeah, you want to see how he comes back from the ACL. Does he have the same explosiveness? Does he have the same quickness? I think the way he reads the game, he can make up for half a step while he's getting that back. I think he can do it. But the extra time, I think, helps far more than it hurts. I think it's a good thing. I think he'll be more fit by the time the season starts than we get there. And, now you've also got a player in Lisandro Lopez. You've got a player who can come in and play minutes when you need him to. That first week, for example, first week of real action. Game, CONCACAF, game. So MLS, CONCACAF, MLS in terms of your schedule that week. Is Joseph going to be ready to start all three? Maybe not. Where do you sit him? Where do you have him come off the bench, or where do you have him not play? Is it the third game? Because then that might be between, unless you have that weekend off, which is a possibility, because it'd be between the CONCACAF games. Maybe you rest him there. There's going to be different ways to play it now, and it's a different manager making those decisions. Go back to the Tata Martino days. He didn't like to change up his lineup at all. He never wanted to change his lineup up. That run of games in September at the Benz, he didn't want to change his team up at all. And he didn't until he secured the playoffs, until he got everything he could out of it. Frank de Boer rotated more I think he kind of rotated the lineup, especially with the maybe bottom half of the starting 11 more, but not a ton. How much will Gabriel Heinze rotate it, especially early when he's trying to get his play style implemented? You know, you've got a little bit of a balancing act with that because you want to get that philosophy in place. You want to get those games under your belt, but you've also got to manage Joseph's knee. And he's not going to be one who's going to be very easy in saying, you know what, like, I will sit this game out.
Yeah.
I will wait.
And getting back to Brendan Rodgers, I mean, that's another point that I have with him. You know, is he going to run with his guys as long as possible with that starting 11 through these two gaps or through the first push in the schedule with Europa League, or are you going to rest some folks and rotate some folks? And so that for me is, you know, one of the things that I was wondering about too when we're talking about Leicester, Jarrett, was, you know, you've got coaches who want to run with their guys. And as it, you know, is Brendan Rodgers going to learn from his experiences at Leicester in the past where you ran with your guys, then you ran out of gas? Is this going to be a learning experience for him as well to measure when to have that star starting 11 and then juggle some guys in to give other guys some rest, knowing that you're juggling Europa League and the Premier League push?
Well, I mean, let's bring the analogy all the way over to NASCAR. I mean, he may not be able to pit and get 4 fresh tires and top off on fuel and maybe doing the math in his head and saying, we're just going to have to see if we can get this across the line. And you might have to run with your guys and risk running out of gas. Because I think it also depends on how deep you go in Europa League.
Mm-hmm.
You keep making pushes in Europa League. I think you got to just keep pushing on that and keep leaning on that because, I mean, it's a hell of a trophy to potentially bring home.
Yeah.
But I think you're gonna see about how far can we get this thing all the way to the checkered flag without coming on the pit road, even if it means, you know, we're on fumes at the very end. You know, I think you're in good play. I think they're in good shape no matter what to secure a Champions League spot. But you know, how much can you push this and compete with Europa League and or the league, and you start dropping in one. I think you're throwing all the coals into the other one and saying we're going to just burn all the oil we got on whichever one is going to look like the best bet for us.
So I step away for a second and I come back to changing all 4 tires and burning oil. That's what happens.
Yeah, get up on the roof again.
That's what happens when we're trying to figure out, you know, if Leicester City, do they just kind of run this all the way down without taking a pit stop and see if they can see how much they can get without getting gas, and see if they can kind of coast this across the line and not lose a spot because they're worried about climbing back up.
All right,
you run with your guys to the end until they run out of gas.
That's what I'm
leaving you with.
I might have a scoop on. Okay, thanks, Jared.
Oh no! You got a scoop? No.
No, I might have I might be able to scoop our Ecuadorian correspondent El Mataflo. I might have breaking Ecuadorian news.
Yeah,
it's possible. So, the Supercopa Pilsner 2021 will be the curtain raiser to the Ecuadorian season. It will be carried live on pay-per-view by Integrated Sports Media. It's a new 4-team tournament. It is the Supercopa being expanded to 4 with Liga de Quito, Emelec, Independiente del Valle, and 9 de Octubre, the 2020 Serie B champion, which replaced Barcelona. So February 4th is the first semifinal. February 5th is the second semifinal. And then the final is, there's a third place game. February 9th, and the final is February 10th. The games are $10 each, $9.95. Third place game is $12.95. And if you're paying $12.95 for a third place game in a preseason tournament, wow. The final is $14.95. Yeah, maybe. It'll be on U.S. cable and satellite TV, digital pay-per-view via in-demand, DirecTV, Dish. Fight TV is going to have this as well, which had the South American World Cup qualifiers. So the Supercopa in Ecuador is now 4 teams, and you have the Serie B champion coming into it.
Bring it!
Because Barcelona pulled out of it.
And with that, I leave you with my new favorite game to play, which is you list off a name and you try and figure out whether it is a member of a luchador stable or a lower division South American team. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Jarrett. Tristan Suarez is a lower division Argentine team that will be in the second division in Argentina now. They won last night.
6'6" power forward out of St. Mary's.
He also does a great moonsault.
It's
off the top turnbuckle.
Possible, yes. Thank you, Jarrett. Have a good rest of the day, my friend.
Be good, dude.
Oh, all right, we'll see you.
So each of the 4 teams that are playing in this thing get $35,000. The champion gets an additional $50,000. Second place is $25,000. Third place is $15,000. Additionally, the fourth place team just gets their $35,000 for showing up. That's it. Am I going to
nothing?
Am I going to end up ordering the Ecuadorian Super Cup? Oh,
yes,
man, it's possible. Modiflow, look what you've done.
To get Fight TV.
What's that?
Or find a way to get Fight TV.
It's a pay-per-view on Fight TV, John.
Oh.
It's at fight.tv.
Okay, I thought they were like their own separate little network that had
No.
You had to find.
No, it's pay-per-view. That was the whole point. Pay-per-view.
Yeah, you're going to get it.
I blame Modiflow. Well, see, Burned, this is not even that unique because Spain does a 4-team Super Cup because Spain wants all that money too. We need a 4-team Community Shield. In England, we need a 4-team German Super Cup. Coppa Italia could easily go to 4 teams because they'll take that cash as well. Who's going to be the first to go to 8? That's what I'm waiting for.
Ecuador.
That's going to be amazing. Why are you throwing shade at Ecuador? Why you got to do that?
I'm not throwing shade.
Yeah, you are.
You want to be the first. What? Argentina? Argentina goes to 8.
Argentina will have a preseason tournament with 72 teams all over the country, and it'll be single elimination knockout, and they'll have rock, paper, scissors at the end to see who gets the first penalty shot in something. I mean, it'll be crazy like that. That's Argentina, though. We already know this.
So then, what? Spain goes to 8 first? So they can actually get all the champions?
It was totally rhetorical, John, to be perfectly honest.
You figure everybody's getting all these 4s. Somebody's going to want to go to 8.
Let's just hit the merry-go-round real quick.
I do like 4-cards idea. A 4-team Campeones Cup. So you take the 2 MLS Cup finalists. You take the 2 Liga MX winners, because they do the Apertura Clausura, and you play it that way. I'm down with that.
Yeah. I'm all for that.
Okay, you're very excited. What do you have to say, John?
No, I said I'm all for that.
You were trying to say something before, so I was going to let you go. With wind it up. Just go.
Hey, what I'd love to see, but where are you going to put it? Is it going to be home and home in the semis, and then
now you're making it extra games?
Yeah. So make it home and home, and make it 2 legs, or is it just the home sites for the? How do you determine home seating and all this kind of stuff?
No,
Say cash, homie.
I don't know. It's all about the Benjamins. That's what it is. Okay. What do we have on the Twitters quickly before we get into your little standout segment?
Well, we got a lot of stuff on the Twitters, actually.
Well, give me one.
Nathan Pugh, and this is in Portuguese, so you're going to have to pardon me for a second. Now, desejo feliz aniversario a José, uma variola sobre ele sobre a nova White Hart Lane suba os vermelhos John.
Yes.
Translated, I don't wish Jose a happy birthday. A pox on him and the new White Hart Lane up the Reds, John.
Why are we not wishing Jose Mourinho a happy birthday? He has a fun Instagram account. He was very likable in the All or Nothing. He feels like he's turned over a new leaf. I wish Jose Mourinho a happy birthday.
Yeah.
He is very entertaining. I enjoy his hijinks. I do hope he embraces the good side of the game a little bit more. I think he's trying to. He went to the dark side a lot there for a while. I think Real Madrid broke him. Yeah. He feels happier. And he didn't feel happy after leaving Madrid. He didn't feel all that happy when he went back to Chelsea. He definitely didn't feel happy when he was at Manchester United. he feels happier. I mean, he's taking shots at Gareth Bale. That's always fun, right? Everybody enjoys that. So, no. Happy birthday, Jose Mourinho.
Happy birthday, Jose Mourinho. And let's see, what else is on the Twitters? I mean, like I said, we got a bunch of other things on Twitter.
Give me one more. Pick one.
Pick one. But the thing is that I'll pick one. Having to do with the topic this morning, the question of the day.
Yes.
Our Atlanta Foxes came in and answered the question. Answered the first question for us, wondering whether or not Leicester was a title contender.
Mm-hmm.
They said yes. Thank you for joining our TED Talk.
Accurate. I'm with it. I think they're number 4 in the power rankings of the title contenders. Right. But yeah, I think they're a title contender. I'm bought in.
I think they're 4 of the 4, but I think they're a part of the discussion.
Okay. Are you ready?
Sure.
Didn't sound excited. That's usually a bad sign. You start sandbagging at the beginning, it usually goes poorly. I've seen this happen before. You have been warned on pacing on the Twitch pitch. And now, the moment that you've all been waiting for. John Nelson will tell us about Steve Apolinski.
Apolinski & Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here and the SDH network for wrongful death and serious injury matters. There's only one place that you need to go to have these kinds of discussions. It is Apolinski & Associates, LLC. How do you have these kinds of discussions, you may ask? Well, I will tell you. A couple different ways. You can call up Apolinski & Associates at 404-377-9191 and get a free consultation. You can shoot Steve an email directly at steve@aa-legal.com, or you can go on the World Wide Web. Type in aa-legal.com, large device or small, hit the enter key, the return key, the arrow key, whichever device advances your screen to the homepage for Apolinski & Associates, LLC, and a pop-up window pops up, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up 24/7, 365 and a quarter. You can have your questions answered in that manner as well. So a couple different ways that you can address your concerns to Apolinski & Associates, LLC. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, it's Apolinski & Associates, LLC. The website is aa-legal.com.
Man, I warned you about pacing, and you still flew through it.
I did not. That was slower than yesterday.
No, it wasn't.
It was so.
No, I see the time on the timestamp on the song, and no, it was not. It was fast.
It was slower.
It was fast. Let's see what we got here. 7. Okay. The stretching got you behind. Ricky says you don't need it. 8.6. Well done.
Even faster than you would tell me that it's even faster.
What?
If I stretch, that means that there's less content, which means
no. I think the literal stretch. I think like the literal stretching is what we're going with. 8.6. A 10. You got a 10. You got 2 10s.
From who?
Wow. Johannes and DM Tim. 10s. Jason Nix felt attacked by the pen shake. That was -2. You got 6.
That's just emphasis, Jason. That has nothing to do with attacking.
It's a little aggressive. -1 for the arguing. You got an 8. 8.2, but very quick.
Read was over. I could argue after that.
The heck is the arrow key going to do for me? 8.7.
You have a small device like a phone. You hit the arrow key.
KFC said it was slower. You left out stuff. It wasn't slower in time. It was not. It was one of the faster ones. When he gets 1 minute and 16 seconds is fast, and you were right around that today.
Okay, so it's like the national anthem. You want me at like a minute 28?
No, I don't care. Like, it's all about the quality. You don't time it and give you quality. You got to be good on the quality. Period. Saying it's fast doesn't say it's bad. It was just fast. It was fast. 7.1. Sixth Gear took points off because I wagged my finger. I was trying to like hit your little beats, and you kind of changed it up, so you threw me. You normally do that 1 point where it's like the 365 and a quarter and all that. I was kind of like trying to hit your points of emphasis, and you mixed it up on me. 8.2. Katie, I really didn't do anything to the board, but I'll take it. I think I turned the volume down on the music coming in just a little bit. 5.5, 7.95, 4 shots of espresso and milk out of 10. I think that's pretty good. Yeah. 8.1, 7, 7.8. Ragamuffin took you down another point for arguing, down to a 7.
Fine.
Man. Is John angry today? Thomas Jewin asks. I think so.
Well, it's what happens when you don't have a doctor's appointment. You get back to your normal caffeine.
We're not talking about your doctor's appointment again. That's a banned topic.
Good. I don't want to talk about it for another 6 months.
Ay, Dios mío. Okay. Let's get caught up on what's coming up today, because you got some games. Yes, I do. I am going with the censorship, Phoenix. It is true. John talking about parking fiascos with his doctor's appointment yesterday. Was a bad pre-show meeting for soccer over there, then it crept into the show and it got worse. So that is a banned topic now.
Good. I don't want to talk about my doctor for another 6 months. I'm all over that.
About to get muted. All right. Coppa Italia. Inter and Milan. The derby. It's today, 2:45, ESPN Plus. Quarterfinals. Winner will play Juventus or Spal. Probably Juve.
Juventus.
Probably, not definite. Probably. Milan needed penalties to get past Torino. To get here, Lukaku scored at the end of extra time for Inter to beat Fiorentina and get here. Both teams didn't look good in the league. Maybe they were looking ahead to this last weekend. Milan is still on top of the league, 2 points ahead of Inter. Inter has won the Coppa Italia 7 times, but they haven't won it since 2011. Milan has won the last of its 5 Coppa Italia trophies in 2003. It has been a while for both of these teams. What are the numbers saying this morning on the Milan derby?
Inter, a minus 112 in the composite, courtesy of our friends at Odds Portal. Milan, north of plus 300. They're at a 308.
Wow.
And your draw is a plus 277.
Man, Milan's plus 300?
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of tempted. What were the picks on your legal pad from last night?
As I get the legal pad out.
Yeah, you gotta keep that one in a safe spot.
We all had Inter except for Jarrett, who had the draw.
Okay. Inter's the safe pick for sure, but Milan at plus 300, I might find a squeaky juice box and put it on that.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good number. You've got the Cup going on in Spain as well. Couple of La Liga teams playing against one another. Valladolid hosting Levante. Real Sociedad visiting Real Betis. Those are on ESPN Plus as well. They have the Copa del Rey. England, couple of games, couple of interesting ones. I guess the big one that most people are talking about is Arsenal at Southampton today. Arsenal, how do they bounce back from their FA Cup loss on the weekend? A win could move Arsenal within 4 points of the top 4. They were just above the relegation zone about a month ago. It's a pretty good turnaround for Mikel Arteta, don't you think?
Yes, I do. They are a plus 112 at 315. Southampton's pushing a plus 250, and your draw is north of plus 260.
The other 315 game is West Brom hosting Manchester City. What are the numbers on Big Sam?
Well, before we get into that, Jarrett and I had the draw for Southampton, Arsenal. You and Nick had Arsenal winning that one.
Yeah, I think Arsenal.
As a part of the picks.
Yep.
West Brom. No, all right, cliffhanger. West Brom, what do you think?
They're at home. They're bad.
Yes.
They're hosting Manchester City, who's very good.
Mm-hmm.
Plus 1450.
Oh, you're close. Plus 1562 in the composite.
All right.
So then that would make Manchester City what?
Minus 675.
Minus 526.
Okay. Yeah, Manchester City wins, and it's ugly.
Yeah.
I do not see Big Sam getting this done. Now that I say that, of course, Big Sam will pull another, it's a magical draw, because he's a genius. Look at Big Sam figuring it out. He got a draw against Manchester City. Then they go on and lose like 5 games in a row and concede 47 goals in those 5 games. The early games, Crystal Palace hosting West Ham, Newcastle hosting Leeds. I will be paying attention to Newcastle and Leeds. What do the odds makers think of that one?
Leeds a -110, Newcastle a +290, and your draw is north of +290.
What are you thinking on this one?
I think Leeds.
I mean, it should be. It should be. I feel like Newcastle's the kind of team that Leeds can really open up and exploit. I think teams that play on their heels struggle with Leeds' style, and I don't see Newcastle changing that coming into this.
The totals, over-under at 2.5 is a -154, 3.5 is a +156. So basically they're looking at 3 is where it changes.
Okay. And is that it for the action today? That's it for the big action today. Other news, some updates on the transfer scene. Has Martin Odegaard actually officially become an Arsenal player yet? I don't think so.
Yeah.
They're trying to get it done today. Obviously not to play today, but I think he's in London. I think he's done his physical. I think everything is good. It just hasn't been officially announced yet. He could feature on Saturday against Manchester United, according to reports. Just to recap, he was at Real Sociedad on loan last year from Real Madrid. He wanted to go back there. Real Madrid's like, no, we're not helping one of our rivals fighting for European spots. So, no, you got to go somewhere else. Mikel Arteta came in and wanted to go for him. Makes sense. I think it's a good get for Arsenal. I think it's a really important get for Arsenal, and he'll help them a lot. Papu Gomez has confirmed that he is going to Sevilla. He is leaving Italy. 32-year-old is going to Sevilla for 3.5 years. That's a longer deal than I expected. €6 million initially, plus €1 million in add-ons. That's the transfer fee. It is not a loan. It is a transfer going to Sevilla in the long term. Sorry, FC Cincinnati. Papu Gomez is not coming to eat your Skyline chili.
No.
Jesse Lingard, Manchester United, looks like he's going to go to West Ham, according to the BBC. They are leading the race. Hasn't been able to break into the team. He needs to play. West Ham seem to be the one that's in the best spot, but there is a twist to this. It would require, to get Lingard, they would have to sign either Craig Dawson or Saeed Benrahma on a permanent basis. They'd have to get that done because the Premier League only allows teams to have a maximum of 2 domestic loan signings within their squad. And you thought MLS was the only one with crazy roster rules. So they've got to. They've got to sign one of them or let one of them go back. They are on loan from Watford and Brentford, respectively. You could probably make all that work, I would think. I mean, if you're going to go get Lingard, I think you can find a way to make it work and get one of those guys on a permanent from 2 championship teams. One of them will take a little bit of cash to make that deal a permanent one.
Brentford.
Yeah, some stuff out of South America. A South American player in Europe, Adolfo Gaich, who went to CSKA Moscow from San Lorenzo, young Argentine, number 9. They call him El Tanque, big dude. He looks like he is headed to Benevento on a 6-month loan. He has not done well in Russia. Needs to go somewhere else. And it's a 6-month loan, can be extended if he plays in half the games. €11 million option to buy. That could end up being a steal for Benevento. They're catching him coming off of a bad run. I think they could get a good deal out of this. He's a guy I think who can do well in Italy. South American clubs involved in stuff. Enzo Perez, who we've talked about, he was linked with a move to MLS at one point. Even Atlanta United's name came up very tangentially. He looks like he could be going to Valencia or Celta de Vigo from River. 34-year-old central midfielder. He's been in Europe before, but you're starting to get some sniffing around from European clubs. And Marcelo Gallardo wants to know, are you in or you out? And if Valencia or Celta, and remember, Celta has Eduardo Caldet, Argentine manager, who would know him very well. Maybe he goes to Celta de Vigo. That's the one that feels the most likely. Gaston Jimenez in Chicago, reportedly, according to Te'ise, he was reportedly offered to Boca Juniors in a potential transfer, which would be very odd because he's only been in Chicago for a year. I don't know how much there was to that. I don't know if they'll try to pursue that one or not. I didn't expect to hear that. Jimenez, remember, is a player from Vélez and really starred for Gabriel Heinze at Vélez in that holding midfield role we've been talking about. I mean, I don't know what the transfer fee was for him for that Chicago paid. They'd have to get a good return on that to sell him now. That, I don't know. When I saw that one, I'm not buying it. I think it's talk. I don't think it's legit, but keep an eye on Gaston Jimenez going back to Argentina. And Marcos Rojo. I feel like we've talked about him every other day. Yeah. Leandro Aguilera of Te'ise is reporting that he'll go to Boca in the next week. He's already agreed to personal terms. But there was another MLS connection here. There were rumors of interest from the LA Galaxy for Marcos Rojo. They need defensive help. That's legit, but I think he goes to Boca. I think he also just got a Diego Maradona tattoo that is rather large. So that seems to be like, hey, I'm going to Boca Juniors.
Yeah.
I think he ends up at Boca. I'd be blown away if he ended up with the Galaxy. The Jimenez one was the biggest surprise to me. I'm not buying it. I don't think it's legit. I think it's Boca talk.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it. Boca gets linked to everybody in Argentina, and Jimenez, with what he did at Vélez, now he's playing for Paraguay. Like, I don't think it happens. I think he stays in Chicago. Unless Boca comes in with like a $10 million offer or something. Something that is like, well, okay, we got to do this. I don't see it.
Well, I was going to ask, is this one of those things where, like it is with Sport and Marca, where you're posting information about rival clubs just to gin up conversation?
No, there's not a Boca TV and a River. No, it's not that. It's everything just gets talked up with Boca and River in Argentina. I mean, somebody could have said something about like, yeah, Boca was after him 2 years ago, and they're going to go get him now. I mean, there's no telling. It's talk. You're at that stage in Argentina right now where you're between seasons. Boca is going to return to training tomorrow. River has returned to training. Gallardo wants to get his squad right. Boca will be going through these conversations this week. It makes sense. Both of them have a lot to balance. They've got Copa Libertadores. They've got these domestic competitions. First a mini league, another Copa Diego Armando Maradona, and then the league in the second half of the year. They have the Copa Argentina as well. For Boca, the focus is Libertadores, primarily. They want to win Libertadores. It's been a while. For River, I think they always want to win Libertadores, but they haven't had a domestic league trophy in a while. I think that's a bigger emphasis for them than it is for Boca. That feels like the missing component for Marcelo Gallardo.
We have folks on the Twitters. What else is on your sheet?
One more from Brazil, because we know Brazil is crazy. We know managers don't last very long, and we know they play a lot of games in a short period of time.
Brazil!
So Zach Lowy on Twitter reports that Luis Felipe Scolari has already parted ways with Cruzeiro after 3 months. 3 months. In 3 months, they played 21 games. He won 9, drew 8, and lost 4. They're currently 12th in the second division. He was supposed to be the one to get them back up. It's meh. Unhappy with the club's direction, namely unpaid wages, unfulfilled promises from the board, lack of investment in the transfer market. Luis Felipe Scolari said, I'm out.
Other than that,
I'm out. I don't need this junk anymore, is what he said on the way out the door, probably. He's been there and done that many times. He doesn't need that nonsense. Sky Sports Germany with a little bit of transfer, silly season coaching talk. Julian Nagelsmann and Max Allegri are the favorites to replace Zinedine Zidane next season if the Frenchman is sacked. That is from Sky Sports Germany. Other reports had Raul as the favorite to follow the Zinedine Zidane model of let's get a former club legend in to manage the team, even if they have very little or no coaching experience. Okay. Marcelo Gallardo's name has come up. That's like as wide of a range of possible coaching candidates as you will ever find for a massive club like Real Madrid. You know, a German, which is a very different style than Real Madrid has ever played. Max Allegri seems to be the most Real Madrid kind of manager out of this group. An Argentine in Gallardo, who hasn't managed in Europe yet. And Raul, who hasn't managed anywhere yet. Welcome to Real Madrid. It's good times. I do not expect Zidane to be there next year.
No.
I really don't. I just don't think he's going to be back. I do want to get into a couple of things domestically as well, but let's clean up the Twitters first before we jump into that.
Okay, and then there's some other stuff overseas that are headlines as well.
Okay.
But, Twitters. Jason Nix is in this morning with Tuchel, apparently the successor to Lampard at Chelsea. I'm just glad as a Leicester fan that they didn't come for Brendan Rodgers. I think he'll be lured to a bigger club at some point, but we will enjoy it while we can. Curious to see where Frank lands.
See, it goes back to the question, is Leicester, are they a bigger club than maybe we think at this point? Like, if I'm Brendan Rodgers, I'm not going to Chelsea instead of Leicester right now.
Mm-mm.
Not with the boardroom drama and the behind-the-scenes stuff and the short-termism. I'm going to stay at a club where I'm going to be able to work. I'm going to be able to do what I want. I'm going to have a lot of the resources I need. Am I going to be able to spend like Chelsea and Manchester City and Liverpool and Manchester United? No, probably not. But can I compete? Yeah. I wouldn't be looking to leave. You know, not for Chelsea.
No.
Not for Arsenal. Not for anybody outside of the other three in the big spending section. Liverpool, which he wouldn't go back to. Manchester City or Manchester United. Those are the only ones that feel like he should jump from Leicester to, in my opinion. I get it, and Jason Nick says I think the Big Six still has a lure for some, and I think Rodgers is one. It could. But Chelsea, Arsenal, and Spurs do not feel like they're bigger than Leicester anymore. They just don't. Maybe I'm giving Leicester too much credit, but they don't feel bigger. Liverpool, City, and United, okay. I can buy what you're selling on those three. But he's in a really good spot. I think people expect him potentially to jump because of what he did at Celtic and leaving them the way he did to jump to Leicester, which was a jump up. But man, it's kind of a narrow jump up from Leicester. I think he's in a great spot. He could be there as long as he wants. Because he'll have the resources to compete as long as he's there, I think.
My only concern has to do with what we've been looking at with the finances recently, with Top and the Srivana Hadaprabha family taking out all of the loans and where they are right now.
But I think everybody's in spots like that. I mean, outside of maybe City and PSG, you know, we've heard it with Leicester. I don't think Chelsea's probably in that spot too, because I don't think Roman's hurting too bad. But I think a lot of teams are having to figure that stuff out. You know, are they just getting out in front of it to make sure they've got operating capital and they don't end up in a Barcelona situation where it's like, yeah, guys, those December checks that we owe you, we can't pay them this month. We'll get you next month. It's end of January now. Guys, you know those December checks that we couldn't pay you then and we still can't pay you now? We got you next month. Maybe they're getting out in front to avoid that kind of thing. And it sounds worse than it is. I don't know, but I think Leicester's in a really good spot. Unless there is a massive financial issue, he should stay there. Because City's not going to come calling.
No.
I don't think Manchester United would come calling. And Liverpool wouldn't. So, the other three, I just, and it's not to slam on them, I just don't think they're a huge jump up from what Leicester is. Not right now.
Yeah, and Brendan Rodgers has been able to build a team, and it's been the ownership has trusted him and his lieutenants to build the pieces and get the get the guys like So-Yun Chu and Justin and folks like that to help build what's going on. They're leaving them alone. And I think that there's value in that as well when you're trying to build something and where Leicester is right now.
So Domer says Leicester is a top 6 club right now. Then who's not a top 6 club? Arsenal?
Yeah, that'd be my guess.
I mean, just on the table, but that's not how you define it.
Yeah.
Swixter says Chelsea or Arsenal. Sorry, Domer. I don't know. I don't know if it's that it's a big. I think it's a big 7.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a big 7 than somebody is out, because I don't think Spurs is out. I don't think Chelsea's out. I don't think Arsenal's out of that conversation. I think Leicester's just in it. I think it's a big 7. The Super 7.
Super 7.
It's not a big 6. It's a Super 7.
Super 7.
That's what we're going to call it from now on.
Ezra Packham is in this morning, and we were talking about the MLS possible timelines and calendars. Is MLS 2021 schedule supposed to be played with teams in the West also? I really miss those big games with Western teams.
Don't know, and I think they intentionally left that out. There's really no way to know yet. I wonder if I wonder if they'll release the schedule in chunks, which I would. And I wonder if they'll start with closer trips. Now, they did set a rivalry week. So you don't want to burn through your nearby rivals early, even though from a logistical standpoint that would make a lot of sense. I think you're going to do early on maybe close but not rivalry close. So Atlanta, you could play Cincinnati, you could play Miami, you
Nashville.
could play, that might be rivalry depending on where you want to do it. I think they'll probably keep the rivalry week game with Orlando.
Yeah.
So sure, you could do that. You could do DC. You could even do Columbus. I think they'll do those. But for others, it's going to be a little more challenging because, your nearby teams are your rivals, and there's not a whole lot of other nearby teams. I don't know. I hope they do. I mean, I hope that we have a fairly normal, balanced schedule, as balanced as it can be with the size of the league now. But I don't think they even have an answer to that yet.
Colin Martz in our Leicester discussion says, what about expectations for Europa League this season? Given their draw, they should at least advance to the round of 16.
And that would be the element that we haven't really talked about with them. Some of the bigger clubs with their roster, maybe they can rotate a little bit more with European competition. Will it make it harder for Leicester to be a title contender? And are they going to have to make some tough choices at times? They might, because that's a draw that they can do something with. And you don't want to toss that away on being the 4th team in a 4-horse race for the league title, where you could, you continue to advance in Europa League. You can win Europa League. Leicester winning the Europa League is not crazy talk. So do you want to maybe sacrifice your league position? But this is the Atalanta conundrum that we talked about last year. You're 4th. If you fall, you're out of Champions League next year, where you'd like that money and you'd like that opportunity. You can't fall, but you got to go after Europa League, I think.
Yeah.
That's going to be really interesting for Leicester when we get to that point. They're going to have to stack up as many points as possible before they get back into the European competition. And it's not going to be easy. You're right now. So just to recap where they are, you are 2 points out of the top spot. Manchester City has a game in hand on both Manchester United, who is 2 points to the good at the top of the table. They have a game in hand on Leicester as well. Now, Leicester's schedule for the next month, they go to Everton, they host Leeds, 2 tough games. They go to Fulham, they go to Wolves, 2 games they should win, even on the road.
Yeah.
I think you have to.
Yeah.
FA Cup, you host Brighton. Maybe you got to punt a little bit there. Maybe you got to rotate some there.
Yeah.
Because next game, 3 days later, is hosting Liverpool. Then you go to Slavia Prague.
Mm-hmm.
You got to punt FA Cup. You got to win those 2 games on the road that are winnable against Fulham and Wolves. If you do that, I mean, if you advance in FA Cup, that's fine, but you've got to rest players in that game. You got to go all out to win those 2 on the road that are winnable, and you've got to pull a win against Liverpool. If you do that, then maybe we're having a different conversation. But then you go straight into Europa League. Then is it you go to Prague and you shut down shop and you park a bus and you do everything possible to get out of there with a decent result because you get them at home in the second leg.
Yep.
You go to Villa in between those 2 games too. That's not a simple one. It's going to be tough. That's the challenge. That's the biggest question mark for Leicester is how they manage that portion. Liverpool going to Slavia Prague, coming back and going to Villa, and then hosting Slavia Prague in the second leg of the Europa League. And then they host Arsenal right after that. That's not easy either. Mm-hmm. So those 5, man.
Mm-hmm. And then Atlanta Foxes came in and answering the second question that you posed this morning, barring any injury setbacks, it possibly is a disappointment if they don't qualify for Champions League. Thing to remember, and this goes to what we were talking about, thing to remember is there is a big 6 in many seasons. The pat on the back is being the best of the not big 6. Given Chelsea and Arsenal struggles, Champions League's definitely within reach.
I will come back to the Atlanta Foxes with it's a Super 7 now.
Super 7.
It's a Super 7. And being just outside is okay. I think it's okay if you don't qualify for the Champions League, if you're Leicester this year, if you make it to the Europa League semifinals. If you make a deep run in Europa League and that takes you away from some points in the league that you would need to get to 4th, that's a trade-off that I think is okay to make. That's it. If you get bounced in the Europa League in this round and then you don't finish 4th, that's a problem. I guess if you win the FA Cup, that would be the only other thing. If you get a trophy like the FA Cup and you don't finish 4th, would that be okay? Yeah, I think so. I think it would.
Nathan Pugh answering the Leicester question as a Liverpool fan. He goes, yes, I'm a Red, so I hope they're disappointed.
They might finish ahead of Liverpool. I'm just saying. They are right now 4 points ahead. They're better defensively. They're 2 goals less scored. They're definitely in better form. I don't know.
Jason Nick says they're in it, but both Manchester teams will need to run a bad form 3 to 5 matches for my Foxes to have a serious shot. Yes, if no UCL, it is a disappointment, especially after last year.
The Europa League thing, and probably should have included that caveat, the Europa League thing would make it okay for the Champions League to me if they don't get in. If they make a deep run semifinals in the Europa League, that would be okay. I do think the risk for everybody hoping this is a true 4-horse race, or maybe even more if Tottenham continues to close, or Everton makes a run, or we get a surprise from a West Ham or a Villa, or Thomas Tuchel comes in and turns Chelsea around. I think the Manchester teams will pull away a little bit in the next 4 weeks. I think that's what's going to happen. I'm not taking any juice boxes to the local establishments on it, but I think that's where it will go.
No, our composites that we consult for juice boxes currently only have Manchester City as the only minus on the board when it comes to winning the Premier League.
What's the order they have it in right now?
Manchester City is basically a minus 225, then everybody else is on the plus side. Manchester United, Liverpool, Leicester, Tottenham, and then everybody else is in 5 digits.
Okay, so they have Leicester as the 4.
Right.
Okay. And that's about where I'm at with it. But you win those 2 games on the road that you can win against Fulham and Wolves, and you beat Liverpool straight up, then we're definitely having a different conversation. It's going to be fun. I mean, you've got a lot of variables for all of these teams with what's coming up. So, I mean, where it stands right now, where we think it's going, that could change. You have an injury. You have, just fatigue. I mean, there's different things you have positive COVID tests. Like, there's so many unknown variables that could change this. I hope it stays with as many teams challenging as long as possible. Because that's always been my issue with England, is it's felt like, it turned into City and Liverpool running away from everybody, and that's not happening now, and it's great. So I hope it stays entertaining for as long as possible, and I hope Leicester's part of it.
The last Leicester thought comes from Swickster right now. Contender, yes. Will they win it? Unlikely. I think top 4 is a good goal and continue to build towards being a consistent contender.
Continue to build the Super 7.
Super 7.
It's a Super 7. I'm serious. We're going to get that over. Okay. Let's get into Thomas Tuchel and Chelsea real quick. Really good piece over at CBS Sports. Their soccer page, they're starting to beef that up a little bit. Mike Goodman wrote about what to expect from Tuchel at Chelsea. And, I mean, he had some questions like we said yesterday. They've averaged, his teams at Dortmund and PSG averaged more than 60% possession. So a lot of the ball. But one thing that stood out about his teams in both spots, they don't take a ton of shots. And that even goes back to his time before Dortmund. His teams have a lot of the ball, but they don't take a ton of shots. Not high volume shooting. But generally the XG is very high. They work to high quality of shots. Now, Tuchel has to make these pieces fit together for Chelsea. He's not I am a 3-4-3 guy. I am a 3-5-2 guy. I am a 4-3-3. No, he will do whatever fits what he has. So that's good. When you have a lot of mismatched parts, that's a good situation to be in. That will help. At PSG, he got as many of his big players on the field as possible. Chelsea, can he do that? How can he get all these guys on the field? Dortmund was a little different than PSG in that he had young players coming through, and he had no problem playing them. Christian Pulisic was one of them. Ousmane Dembele. He played guys. He didn't have a problem with that. He's got both at Chelsea. So maybe, our concerns about a Mason Mount are unfounded. He shouldn't have a problem playing his best players. He's played young guys before. Now, I thought this was really interesting in Goodman's column. And we've talked about the 6 for Atlanta United a lot. Goodman points out that Tuchel, as a possession guy, you normally expect that position to be somebody who is on the ball a ton. 70, 80, 90 passes a game in that defensive midfield, that 6 role. That's not really what he's went to. At PSG, he put Marquinhos in that role, who had been playing center back prior to Tuchel's arrival, moved him into the defensive midfield. He made Julian Weigl a star at Dortmund. When Tuchel left, it went away for Weigl. He likes to get his fullbacks up high, which is good for Chilwell and Reece James. But what that means, what he wants out of the defensive midfield, he's not looking for them to be on the ball a ton. He's not using them in the build-up. He wants them to be able to drop and make a back 3. He wants them to be an auxiliary center back, really. That's the number one thing he's looking for. That's not really Conte's game. Like, does Chelsea have a player like that? Not exactly. So how do they solve that? Does he change? He's shown flexibility a ton. People who don't like Thomas Tuchel say he's a very good manager. I think that needs to be understood for Chelsea fans. I'm kind of with Domer here. I don't think he's there for a long period of time. The contract is reportedly through the end of the 21-22 season. I'm not saying that because I think he's a bad manager or he's going to fail or any of that. I think he's a short-term guy. I think there will be a blow-up with him and the board at some point. That's just who he is. But he might be the best person to get something out of what he has. The 6 is the question because that's an interesting point that Goodman makes over at CBS. You expect in a possession team that six to be a guy on the ball a ton. That's not generally what he's looked for out of that. So, do you have the ways to make the possession work without that player being that, or does he adapt? That's one of the things to watch for early on with Chelsea and how he does that, how he structures this team. Byrne points out that Tuchel had Gundogan at the 6 as well, or the 8. Doesn't have that kind of quality at Chelsea in the central midfield. He's got different kinds of central midfielders than I think he's typically had. So how does he make everything else work with that hub, different characteristics than he's used to? I don't know. That's going to be one of the big questions. They're still saying he should be introduced later today, potentially, if he gets into town quick enough, I guess. I don't think he'll be on the bench tomorrow, but who knows? Maybe he's just sitting there observing while others kind of take the team for the match. It's going to be an interesting watch, for sure, because of his personality, because of just the eyeballs on Chelsea. After moving on from Lampard, the talent they haven't gotten the most out of it. It's going to be very interesting to see what he does. I'll be watching them from a tactical perspective to see kind of what changes he makes and how it looks. One point that Derek Ray made, and Derek Ray, has covered Tuchel from his time in Germany. Derek said that Tuchel's personality changes when he's interviewed in English versus German. Very serious in German, much more jovial in English. Maybe he'll come off as a little more likable in London than he has in other stops. We'll see. For some reason, his English, he seems like a fun guy. He seems like a better guy. German, it can get a little salty, a little dicey. WC Core says, Moises Caicedo to Chelsea when Brighton goes down? Stranger things have happened. Might not be a bad fit. It's going to be a fun watch because they have the talent to get back into a European spot for next year. Easily.
Yeah.
And I think he's a good enough manager to get something out of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Barney Ronay over at The Guardian had a piece that he wrote as well, and he says there's some obvious advantages at Chelsea. Through Rangnick, an early mentor, both Timo Werner, the player, and Tuchel, the manager, he has a direct line on how to get the best out of Chelsea's £50 million striker. No excuses here. Tuchel looks like the ideal choice for a player who needs to be used in a specific way to replicate his Bundesliga form. Rangnick is also a huge fan of Kai Havertz, who he once described as Cruyff-like in his all-around game. Should Tuchel get the job, it's to be hoped the odd long chat with his old boss is in line. Otherwise, Tuchel will make Chelsea's players fit his pattern with obsessive drills and a very clear idea of where he wants them to be on the pitch. The Tuchel style is based on running, hard pressing, and speed of thought. Indeed, in Germany, this playing style was considered at one point to be classically English.
Okay. Yeah, and Bernd, you would probably know more about how that evolution went. Though I know those qualities were looked at as very English, but I think once you get past the surface level, like, yes, hard running, but it was... I don't know. It's always felt different to me. Like the Bundesliga, even in that era, when Tuchel was on the rise, when Klopp was on the rise, when Pep went to Bayern, it felt very different than the Premier League. You had the running, but the transition, the counter pressing, like the running was for a different reason. It wasn't just play vertical and run, which is where I think of the English. And maybe I'm being unfair. Okay. We'll see. I want to see how he adapts to the players that he has. Byrne says, I've never heard that. I've never heard that Tuchel's style is English. Yeah, I'm... If just hard running is the only thing we're going to go on, sure. But there's a whole lot more to it than that. I don't know. That feels weird. Byrne says all German teams run mindlessly at times. See, the mindlessly makes me think of some bad English teams. Like, I feel like the running has more purpose in the German game.
Yeah.
Now, how quick can he get that across, taking over midseason? He's got some players who will understand what he's wanting, for sure. He's got Thiago Silva, who was with him at PSG. That's going to help as well. He's got some other players that reportedly he was chasing while he was at PSG that he would potentially, like Rudiger, bring into the team. And he's got his big 2 German stars in Werner and Havertz, who I think a big part of his job is to get the most out of them. So he's got the pieces, but how does he handle adapting to what he has to work with? That's going to be very, very interesting to watch. It'll be a fun one to study a little bit for those of you who are digging into tactics more and paying attention to how the holding midfielders work. Like little things. There's going to be a lot of elements of Chelsea to watch. For me, it's that midfield. That's what I'll be paying a lot of attention to early on is the midfield, how it functions, who's there, and what their jobs are. That's what I'll be looking for. Okay. One thing we have not gotten into just yet. Caden Clark. Now, this came out from The Athletic yesterday. It's not a surprise because it had been talked about. At least when he signed with the MLS New York Red Bulls. And reports are out there, and this is from Paul Tenorio, from Jeff Reuter, from Sam Stejskal, all of them contributed to this at The Athletic, that this had been talked about even when he signed to the second team, Red Bulls 2 and USL. He's going to go to RB Leipzig, according to these reports, after this MLS season. The big reason why is he's not 18 yet. He doesn't have an EU passport. He can't move yet. I think he could move in the summer, but the Red Bulls are going to keep him in New York through the 21 MLS season, which makes sense. Go in mid-season 21-22 to Leipzig. But they had that idea when they signed him. He left the Barca Academy in Casa Grande, Arizona. He signed the USL deal with Red Bulls too. Initially, and this is from sources to The Athletic, the plan was not even to go to MLS. It was to stay with the USL team and then go in the summer of 21 to Germany. But he lit it up in the USL Championship. Did really, really well for Red Bulls too. That prompted the MLS team to say, well, yeah, we kind of need him, and we're going to get him in now, and he's ready. So we got to pay Minnesota money, which was stupid.
Yeah.
Stupid rules in MLS. Minnesota held his rights because he's from that area, and he played for, I think, the Minnesota Thunder Academy when he was very young. So somehow the MLS Minnesota United held his rights, even though if he had stayed in Minnesota, he would not have played in a Minnesota United Academy because they didn't have teams in his age group at any point in his youth career. I think he spent time when he was very young with the Minnesota Thunder, and that was it. But somehow that was enough to get his rights. And they got some allocation money out of it, and that's awful. That stuff's dumb. That stuff needs to be cleaned up. Anyway, the original idea was to not spend that money, was to leave him with the USL team, take him to Leipzig. Well, he needed to jump up, and he did, and he scored 3 goals in 8 games in MLS. One of those in the playoff game against Columbus. Scored in that game. Scored against Atlanta. Talented player. 17, he'll turn 18 this season. This feels like something that the New York Red Bulls can do more of. Their academy has to continue to produce players. They need more Tyler Adams type players, of course. You know, we've mentioned it a bunch of times when press conference a few months ago, Red Bull Leipzig sporting director, or it might have been just the Red Bull soccer overall, talked about, is there more young talent coming from New York like Tyler Adams? Nope. Not right now. I think this might have been pre-Caden Clark's coming out party. But there wasn't. And that's a problem. Coming from Salzburg to Leipzig, yes. Coming from New York to Salzburg, no. New York to Leipzig, no. Now we've got another one. If New York can't always produce guys, they can do some of this. They can sign guys to Red Bulls too. And there's players. There's players who, we talked about it with the Super Draft. There are players who slip through the cracks. There are players who are late bloomers. There are players who are at a place like the Barca Academy in Casa Grande, Arizona, not attached to an MLS team. There are players out there that the Red Bulls can go recruit, use the USL team to bring people in, and then shuttle them in to Leipzig or Salzburg. And I think Salzburg's the more likely one in general because it is kind of the stepping stone. But they've got to get better at that to fit what you're seeing, because the Brazilian Red Bull, Bragantino, is going to jump them in importance if they haven't already. You know, Red Bull doesn't really seem to care a ton about New York. They've botched the Kaku situation. You know, it was a renewal of his option. They left an opening for him to say, well, you didn't do this properly, you didn't get me this in writing, so I can leave, and he's going to go on a free, it looks like, to the Middle East. So you got nothing for him after you turn down transfer opportunities. You have just signed a 17-year-old Venezuelan. Okay, that feels like another one. You're going out on a limb, you're grabbing this guy. Maybe he ends up in Salzburg in a couple of years. Smart. But it's a low risk. It's not a lot of money. The New York team has to find their niche in the Red Bull organization. Caden Clark kind of moves. Guys who are not fitting in at an MLS academy yet. Maybe they're from a part of the country where there's not one. Maybe it's a USL player who comes up. Maybe it's a college late bloomer. Those are the guys where I think New York can really focus on. And guys like the Venezuelan that they can bring in who, okay, he's not going to go to Bragantino, first division team in Brazil, that they're trying to get more competitive. All right, maybe he goes to New York, and then you see what you have. They've got to find that, though, because otherwise I don't know what the goal is for New York Red Bulls, because it doesn't feel like the goal is to win MLS Cup.
For me, all I'm really doing, I look at the infrastructure, the basic infrastructure, as to where they are in the pyramid of thought for the Red Bulls organization. Everything with the stadium, tarps, development, all that kind of stuff. For me, I'm talking off the field stuff. For me, was an indicator of just how much thought was being put into Red Bulls New York themselves by the parent organization. If you're not doing all of these things just from a stadium perspective, and you're sitting there and you're putting tarps up and you're saying one thing when it looks like it's something else when it comes to why you're putting tarps up and things like that, to me, it's just the level of care doesn't seem to be there off the field. And I think that you're right. I think that Bragantino is either right there or surpassing what we're seeing in Harrison, New Jersey, about where the level of interest is by the parent organization.
I feel like you're being unfair about the tarps. There is construction going on. They are redoing how the upper level of parts of the stadium is going to work. That's happening. You don't believe me? You're just staring at me.
I do. I do. It's like they were saying one thing, and then, you have tarps up, and then they were saying something else.
Now, they
entirely.
had tarps up in some other spots, but they were doing some construction. Like, there was some work that was being done.
I'm not denying the construction part as a part of this discussion, but I think that there were tarps up in other places, and you're saying it's related to one thing or the other. And
that's such a small piece. Like, that doesn't matter to me.
But to me, it's just indicative of a larger picture.
No, it's not. It's separate. The way they've run as a business in terms of bringing people into the stadium and all that, I don't think they've done a great job from day one of going to Jersey. I don't think that's their goal. But that's not their goal, though. That's the whole point. That's what I'm saying. It's not indicative of anything, because that's not what they're there for. They are there to develop talent for the Red Bull organization. That's it. That's why the New York Red Bulls exist. They are there to develop talent. They're not there to win trophies, I don't think. They're not there to set attendance records. They're there to develop talent. And they haven't done enough of that. It feels a little bit like the LA Galaxy, where they signed a bunch of homegrowns and they didn't do enough to get them to the next level. And maybe the homegrowns weren't good enough. Maybe they were just at a little bit lower level. I don't know. But they haven't done what they're there to do. They are there to develop talent. And they just haven't. And I'm with Sam Williamson. I mean, they're not embracing Jersey. They're the New York Red Bulls, but they could really be Jersey's team.
Nope.
That stuff isn't their goal, though. That's not what they're there for. So, like, missteps on that stuff, to me, is not indicative of anything. Their goal is to develop talent, and it is not a guaranteed science. You can't say, we're going to develop players, and then you do. That's not how it works. Like, there's chance, there's luck, there's, you got to do the right things to create your own luck. But yeah, you can sign the best 10, 15-year-olds from that region 3 years in a row. And it doesn't guarantee you that any of them become professionals in 5 years.
Nope.
There's no guarantee to it. If you're doing the right things, more will develop as professionals than most teams in that situation. If you're creating a structure, if you have a curriculum, if you have good coaches. But one thing here that moves out, one coach who leaves, one director who leaves, one element that changes, it can all fall apart quickly. The New York Red Bulls have developed Tyler Adams for the Red Bull organization. That's it. Philadelphia has sent as many players to Red Bull Salzburg as the New York Red Bulls have.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. That's the goal. I mean, Byrne points it out, and it's legit. Salzburg's function is to develop players for Leipzig. New York's function feels like it should be to develop players for Salzburg.
Yeah.
And occasionally you get a Tyler Adams who jumps and goes straight in. Great. But you look at the roster that the Red Bulls have, and it just doesn't feel like that's where they're going. Now, the Caden Clark one, again, could be another way that they can contribute to the Red Bull organization. You found a guy who's very good, who was not in an MLS academy. You brought him into your club, first through the second team, and now he's going to move on. That's great. But, I mean, let's go through it. Aaron Long's 28. It doesn't feel like he's going to make that move. He hasn't been talked about going to any of the other Red Bull teams. Talked about England, maybe, and that could bring in some money to the club. That's good. But he's 28. He was a guy that people had missed on in Portland and Seattle. Royer's 30. Does he go to Salzburg just to help them at some point? Sure, but he's not going to move on any further than that. Christian Cáceres, 21. He was expected to be the Tyler Adams replacement. He hasn't shown enough to say that he's a Salzburg guy to me. I don't think he's at that point. I don't think he's an RB Leipzig guy. Sean Davis is 27. He's your kind of lifer in New York, captain. You need guys like that. That's fine. Kyle Duncan, maybe. He's 23, but maybe. Brian White, 24. I don't see it. Not to one of the other Red Bull clubs. He could be a lower division England guy, maybe. Jason Pondant, you brought in at 23. No. Omer Fernandez, maybe 21. He's got talent. I could see him maybe making a Salzburg jump. I could. Velo's 27. David Jensen's 28. Emre Tarek's 28. You just added Andres Reyes, which, yes, that could be a look at this. He's 21. He played for Miami last year. Could he be one who makes the jump? Potentially. Barlow's 25. It doesn't feel like it's there for him. Drew Yearwood. Yes, possibly. You got him from Brentford in August. 20. I could see him. Sean Nealis is 24. Mara's 30. I mean, you're getting further down now. There's just not a lot of guys coming.
Yeah.
So they've got some things to figure out. Now, let's see what Gerhard Struber does with the team, because he understands what it is to make that jump from his time there. I think that's what got him the job. He's the one who is supposed to build a club that is developing guys for Salzburg, for Leipzig, because I don't think that was happening before. Whether it was player acquisition, whether it was just the coaching staff, whether they were stuck in between, kind of where Red Bulls had been, where they were winning supporter shields. I think everything's changed now. I think it's all about strengthening Leipzig. And New York's not really contributing to that outside of Tyler Adams.
Yeah, Rich Ransom says the development outside the stadium's more. Congratulations to the cities of Newark and Harrison. Inside the stadium, it seems Austria gave up on Red Bull's RBNY performance once NYCFC and the high-priced DPs of Henry and Cahill left.
Well, they changed their focus. I don't know if NYC was as big of a feature of changing their focus. They changed from the Cahills, the Marquezes, the Henrys to we're going to develop from within. And they did, and they won a supporter shield, in 2018. It's not that far back. But all the talent from that team is gone. And it wasn't ever talent that was going to go to Salzburg anyway. So I get it. You're going to clear BWP, you're going to clear Robles, you're going to clear Sasha Klestin. All right. Dax McCarty, you're clearing those guys out because they were not going to go to Leipzig. They were not going to go to Salzburg. Fine. The group that's come in is not as good as the group that you cleared out, and they're not going to make that jump either. So what are you doing? What is your goal? What are you there for? I think it's to develop talent. They're going to have to change the way they recruit talent. They're definitely going to have to change the way that they develop it. And I think the expectations are different. And if you're a New York Red Bulls fan, is that what you want to be? Because you are a development club for an Austrian Bundesliga club.
Yeah.
You're not even truly a development club for a German Bundesliga club. And I don't think they're telling that story. I don't think they're selling it. They're not competitive enough, so they're in this weird purgatory that is going to be awkward. If you're producing good young talent, you should be competitive in MLS, period. They're right around the borderline of being competitive. We'll see what Gerhard Struber does. We'll see if they continue to kind of understand where they are. But I've got some real questions about their long-term future because I don't think they're filling the need that their owners have for them. And I don't know how invested their owners are.
Breaking news sounder, please. This comes from Chris Ashley, who says he can't listen live this morning, but he wanted to have us do that. Greenville Triumph have signed head coach and sporting director John Harkes to a multi-year extension. USL League One Coach of the Year following the title run in 2020. Newly agreed upon extension between the Triumph and Harkes runs through the 2023 season. So Harkes is staying in Greenville for the foreseeable future.
Makes sense. Still think DC should have looked at him when their job was open, but we'll see how Losada does in the long run. Harkes will have a future beyond it when he wants it. I think he's shown the ability to manage at a very high level. It's good for Greenville to keep the continuity for now. And you can start to plan, okay, now that you've got whatever the multi-year deal is, now that you can say, this will probably be the last multi-year deal that he signs. If he does what he's done so far, he will get an opportunity to move on. But now you can plan. All right, what's the succession plan? Are we going to develop from within? Are we going to start thinking about guys from the outside? Do we want to develop somebody from within to take over in the next couple of years? That would seem to be the right plan for Greenville. But great, not rehire, great extension for a guy who just won you a title. So you want to keep that in-house and you want to continue to build, and Greenville's in a good spot.
Other stuff on Twitter, what else is on your mind before we hit it?
What else is on Twitter?
All right, well, Tafka says, I've seen the best draft picks ever type articles, but here's my question. College used to be the primary development model. It isn't that anymore. If we had to demarcate the modern era of the super draft, where do we draw that line? 2014, 2015?
No, I don't even know where the line would be, to be honest, because, even you go further back, it was a crapshoot in the super draft. I think it's further back than 14 or 15. I don't know if it was ever truly the predominant development model. Even at the beginning, I don't think it was. Because MLS put a focus on bringing in guys from outside the league. Did it develop the depth? Yeah, I could see that. But impact, maybe not so much. We got a little bit of breaking news, and which one are we going to hit? Which one's the closest one for me to play? This is where we need somebody else to have these buttons closer. I'm finding it. There we go. We'll do this one. Atlanta United announces that a Johnny Fortune has been called into the Trinidad and Tobago national team, senior national team, who are playing the U.S. men's national team on January 31st. Fortune's 18. He's with the Atlanta United Academy. 19 appearances with the U17s in his first year with the Academy. He joined it prior to the 2018-19 season. 5 goals that season. Played 3 times for the U19s. Following season, he played in 4 matches with the U19s, shortened season. He's played 4 times for Trinidad's U17s. Made his pro debut with Atlanta United 2 against Charleston on July 11th of this past season. Played 11 times for the Twos. 5 of those were starts. Scored his first pro goal against the Miami FC on September 12th. 464 minutes played in the USL Championship. Passed at 78%. Won his duels at just under 49%. Going to play for Trinidad and Tobago senior national team. Very cool for a Johnny Fortune.
No doubt about it. You want to hit the air horn again?
Good grief, man.
Kevin from Charlotte sends this along, and this is from the second newspaper that arrives daily in your mail in England that we don't really reference. The Premier League referees have changed guidance to the rule that allowed the controversial Bernardo Silva goal to stand after Manchester City's Rodri came from an offside position to get the ball from Tyrone Mings. Guidance has been added around the offside rule. Urgent talks were held after the outrage, and this is from Mike Keegan.
I agree. It was outrage. I was outraged.
Followed Bernardo Silva's opener at Villa Park to steal the ball from Tyrone Mings. Rodri comes from an offside position, sets up the Portugal man to break the deadlock. Mings himself branded the decision nonsense, while his manager Dean Smith was sent off for overstepping the mark with protests. Red-faced refereeing body PGMOL said the goal had been allowed under a little-known law that reads, player in an offside position receiving the ball from an opponent who deliberately plays the ball, including by deliberate handball, is not considered to have gained an advantage unless it was a deliberate save by an opponent. However, it can be revealed that the PGMOL subsequently held a summit with rule makers and IFAB and UEFA to discuss the issue. Sportsmill can disclose they have agreed on guidance which will be given to refs and which would see the goal disallowed if it was to happen in the future.
Good, because as we said, you can argue and you could lawyer that one into being allowed because it's too open-ended the way it's written, but it didn't feel right. So good that they're adapting to it. That's the thing about replay, and that's the thing about having like all these different looks at things. We can look at these rules that some of them are very, very old, and we can realize that, you know what, maybe we need to change a couple of these for the good of the game. That's one that needs it. Now, if we can get the affecting an active player being an active participant thing, like the Caden Clark goal against Atlanta, maybe we can start to get a little more consistency on that one. PRO, please. Yeah. Good stuff, though. So we've had big news at the end with John Hark's new extension. Well, Johnny Fortune going into Trinidad and Tobago's senior national team for this weekend's match against the United States. He might be playing against George Bello, Miles Robinson. Also, we have good things on the referee front. People are making sense. Very good.
Rich Ransom in discussion, we had our Tuchel discussion. He says coaches are seen more as robots by owners and boards now, like they think it's real life, like a real life video game. Build your dream roster, just assume it'll work no matter what. Coaches are just the guys who are there on the sideline.
In a lot of cases, yeah. And that doesn't work in a lot of cases. Like, most clubs will have their people who make their decisions on their team. The problem that Chelsea has is they don't have that identity. And let's tie it back to Atlanta United real quick. And we can tie it to any MLS team, but Atlanta United has a style, and people have argued that they lost their identity. I will argue the opposite. They went in a slightly different direction with Frank de Boer from Tata Martino, but it was not this dramatic departure that everybody would tell you, because Tata Martino, Frank de Boer, Gabriel Heinze all look at somebody like Louis van Gaal, look at somebody like Pep Guardiola, look at somebody like Johan Cruyff, and say, I want to be like that. I want to take elements of that. That's important. Positional play is a big thing that has been accentuated more at times. I think Frank's teams were more positional play than you would think. The tempo was slower, but the positioning, there's a lot to it. This is going to be a much faster tempo. So it's not this abrupt departure. So you're recruiting players fitting this idea of how you want your teams to play. You want to control matches. You want to play positionally. You want to be able to press the opponent. You want to be able to put them under pressure, but you want to control matches. All right. Each manager who comes in, I'm looking for this kind of player. I'm looking for somebody who does that plus this. Chelsea, it's just like, I've got a bunch of money sitting here on the table, and I need to spend it right now. Who's out there?
Yeah.
There's not that identity. It's just like, oh, Timo Werner, cool, let's go get him. We're going to play him here. Well, he plays better in a transition system, et cetera, et cetera. I don't care. He's very nice. I like him.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a check. That's harder for managers to deal with because then you get mismatched parts. Even with an identity. And look, a bunch of people said that Atlanta United's recruitment is terrible. It's terrible. I don't know if we really got any answers with that in 2020, as crazy as it was. But yeah, you're going to miss. Even when you have an identity, you're going to miss on a signing. A player's not going to live up to what you expected. A player you expect to take a step up, it doesn't happen for them. They lose their confidence. They have an injury. They just don't fit with the players around them. The chemistry doesn't ever develop. It happens. Even in signings that look good on paper, it can get that way. But if you don't have an identity and you're just signing random guys, it's harder for a manager to fit unless you're incredibly adaptable. Carlo Ancelotti doesn't really have this one specific way of playing. He just takes what he has and he makes it work. Zidane, I think generally keeps it pretty simple, makes it work. He's made it work pretty well right now. Maybe he's lost that, but 3 Champions Leagues, he's done okay. Tuchel has an idea of how he wants to play, but he's also shown the flexibility to do it at Dortmund and at PSG. There are very different clubs in very different situations. Can he adapt at Chelsea to closer to PSG in the sense that they can go get whoever they want, but maybe less structure in how they're recruiting and who they're recruiting? Can he adapt at Chelsea and make that group of mismatched parts work? It's a big test. He's probably the best person out there to try it, though. And that's probably why they moved on from Frank when they did. Because if he didn't become available, if PSG didn't pull the trigger on him, I think Lampard would have stayed at Chelsea for the whole season. Because I don't think there's anybody else who would have been the right fit. I don't think Allegri would have been the right fit in that situation. Anybody else, you're just changing the guy in charge. You're not necessarily going to fix the problem. Tuchel might be able to fix the problem. Might.
A couple of other thoughts on what we've been talking about this morning. Tafka on Joseph says, seeing him just getting back to shooting, a 2-month delay is a good thing. Otherwise, we're asking him to jump immediately in early or keeping him on the bench for the beginning of the season. I think he's fully healthy, but definitely not fully fit and fully sharp. 2 months will go a long way toward those two aspects of performance.
Yeah, it's all guessing. I mean, you got to be careful with guessing on these things because you're not seeing the reports, you're not seeing the work he's doing in the gym. Like, you're only seeing a couple little things. He's moving around. He is, by all accounts, on schedule, not behind schedule. He might be ahead of schedule. I don't think there's any concern. I don't think there was a concern about him being ready for training camp starting on January 25th, like it was originally set to. I definitely don't think there's any concern about him being ready to start training camp on February 22nd. I think he'll be fine.
And we're caught up on the Twitters.
Alex Pacine shares in the Twitch pitch that Benny Feilhaber is returning to Sporting Kansas City as a technical staff member. I like that. I like that you're seeing more of these guys who came through in that generation going into the coaching side. You need that in the game. You need some guys who have that kind of experience to bring to the table for the young guys coming through. And Sporting has done a good job. They just signed a bunch of homegrowns. Having somebody like Benny Feilhaber to learn from is a good fit. I'll be curious to see if more MLS teams do what Atlanta's doing with Rob Valentino as kind of that development coach who can maybe jump between the academy, the second team, and the first team, can be a bridge. You know, if you've got guys like Morales and Campbell with the first team, who, could be towards the fringes of the squad, maybe going down to the second team, Valentino can be a guy who meets with them on a regular basis and says, okay, you know, this is what we've seen from you in training. This is what needs to be a little bit better. Can pick up the slack a little bit because Gabriel Heinze, the first team manager, got to win games. He's got to think, you know, big picture. He might not be able to put the focus on player 25, player 26, the young kid who's trying to break through. Sometimes those young guys need a little bit of extra. You know, Valentino here, maybe that's Feilhaber in Kansas City. That is a really important role because you see a young player who gets a taste, gets dropped back down, struggles with confidence. You don't want that. You want him to continue to move along. I love that Valentino move. I love Feilhaber coming into this role. I love to see more moves like that because it's more intentional about development. Development doesn't happen by accident on a regular basis. There's got to be intent to it. And it feels like more clubs in this country are becoming intentional about developing talent in the best way.
And in the case of, you know, Valentino with Atlanta, you can keep with the second team there as well. Everything's all under that same roof, and you can have that constant interaction with folks. And there are other teams in MLS that can do that as well with their club, their second teams in USL Championship right now. That you can always the interaction is back and forth with training with the first team, playing with the second team. So having all of that stuff under one roof with these transitional guys, I think, is big.
Yeah, it's really big. That's going to do it for us today. Continue to let us know what you think about Leicester. Thanks to Niall for the question to get us moving along this morning. He'll be helping us with some content, some thoughtful questions to generate discussion while he's with us as our virtual intern. I'll also have some stuff over on the website as well from Niall. So soccerdownhere.net. We've got a U.S. men's national team game this weekend. I'm sure we'll be hearing more from our friend Bart Keeler, who is starting a podcast here on the SDH network as well.
Bravo.
That'll be coming out regularly. Also, and we're working on the timing and we're working on the naming, our good friend Jessica Charman will be back with a regular podcast on the network. She's a little busy, know. Just had her first child, so she's a little busy. We're working on the timing. We're going to record it. It's hard to commit to a regular time to join the show in the morning, so we're going to record a weekly podcast with Jess and pick her mind about different things, so that's coming too. So we're growing. We're trying to continue to do more stuff. If you're a subscriber on Twitch, if you're a subscriber on Patreon, and you're not in the Discord, please send me a message. We'll get you in. We opened up the tactics room in the Discord, generating some discussion there. It's kind of open-ended. I want the Discord to be a place for all of you guys who listen on a regular basis and contribute to the show in so many different ways to make it a clubhouse to, you know, if there are certain things you want, like I think I'm going to try to set a time for a regular Q&A on Discord. It can be just completely open-ended, whatever is on your mind, probably a early evening during the week, but trying to add more stuff. If you guys have ideas for what some of that stuff could look like, let us know. We're always open to suggestions as we're continuing to grow. But thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out today. Lots of good discussion today. Thanks to everybody who was part of it. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Mucho platiel.
Mucho platiel.